Alright, so in our last video on circles, we are going to learn the equation of a circle, which in my opinion is one of the funnest things about circles. So the equation of a circle in standard form is parentheses x minus h squared plus parentheses y minus k squared is equal to r squared. So kind of like the Pythagorean theorem, this squared plus this squared equals this squared. Now, there's important key information in this. So h comma k is going to be the center of our circle. And then your r is going to stand for the radius. Okay? So in the first part of this, we are going to practice writing the equation of a circle given important key information. So looking at number 1, it gives you the center. So notice in your equation you are always going to have this minus sign. So let's start off with this. So first off, x minus, and then we're going to put our h number, which is the first letter, so 5. Close it, squared, plus y, we're going to have our minus, and then get our y value 3. Close it, squared, equals, and then you're going to put your r here, but we also have to square it. So I would have 2 squared, or 2 times 2, which is 4. And so that is the equation of a circle if they give you the center and the radius. Now they could make you do a little bit more work. I'm going to skip down here to 3 real quick. So it looks different because I have negative numbers. And when you're substituting a negative and a negative, that could get a little tricky. Well, let's do this. So we're going to start with x minus, and then I'm going to put my x value of a negative 2, close it, squared. So we know 2 negatives make a positive, so I'm going to go ahead and make this into a plus sign. Okay? So if you are substituting in a negative number, it will become positive. Then I'm going to have my y minus my negative 11, which will become a plus, squared. And then I'm going to have to do a little bit of math here because they didn't give you the radius. They gave you the diameter, which is the whole thing. And so half of that, if I divide it by 2, is going to be 9. So my radius is now a 9. Now when I plug it in my formula, I would have 9 squared, which becomes 81. Okay? Let's take a look at, we'll look at number 5. And I'll let you guys try the rest. So this one looks a little intimidating because I have a 0 and because I have a square root for my radius. Well, let's do this. So start off with parentheses, x minus, and then my x value, which is a negative 4. So I'm going to go ahead and make that a plus. Now with your 0, we could say, for example, y minus 0 squared. But if you take 0 away, nothing's going to happen. That's just going to be your y squared. So I'm just going to change that to y squared. Since it's 0, there's no need to have it there. And then equals. So let's take a look at this radius of the square root of 47. In all of these other problems, I had to square it. So I'm going to have to square the square root of 47. So let's take a look in the calculator and verify what happens. So if I get the square root button, second, x squared, 47. If I come outside and square my answer, I notice the parenthesis went away, okay? Because a squared and a square root cancel each other out. So when you have the square root of 47 and then you square it to put it in the equation, it's going to cancel out, leaving you with a 47, okay? So for example, if your radius was a square root of a 20, in your equation it would just be 20 because the square root of 20 squared, cancels out the square root, leaving you with a 47, okay? So you will not have a square root ever on this right side. All right, so you guys tried 2, 4, and 6. Write the equation of the center, write the equation of the circle given the center and the radius or the diameter, and we'll go over them. So press pause and try those on your own. So here are answers in red. So I changed my signs when I wrote them in the equation, put the squareds, and then radius squared, 14 squared gives you 196. Over here you did have to find the radius first. So if the diameter is 32, the radius is 16. So 16 squared gives you 256. Again, you don't have to have a 0 with this first term. And then lastly, if you square the square root of 158, it would just give you 158. And so that is the equation of a circle. Have fun. All right, you can also write the equation of a circle if you look at a graph. Okay, so the two things you need to write the equation of a circle is obviously the center and the radius, like how we have been doing. And so your graph on your paper is probably kind of hard to see. Let me outline this. So the center is going to be a point. It's an order pair. So if I start at the center, I go 1, 2, 3. And then I went down 2. So that center is at a 1, 2, 3, 1, 2. The radius of the circle you get from going to the center to a part on the circle. And you can either go this way, you can go up and down, you can go down, left, but you can't go diagonal because that's not a straight line that you can count. But from the center to a nice point on the circle, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So that radius is 5 units long. So I can take my center and my radius and write the equation like I did before. So I'll start off with x minus your x value squared, y minus your y value squared. Again, we can go ahead and make that a plus. Equals your r squared, so 5 squared is going to be 25. So if you are given a graph, make sure you find the center and the radius, and then we can use that information to write the center of your circle. Now, time for the harder part. You can also write the equation of a circle if you know the center and then you know a point on the circle. So what that means is if I had a circle and a center, and maybe not necessarily something where I could count the radius, but if I know maybe this is the 0.74, I'm going to try and figure out that radius to solve our problem, okay? Now, unfortunately, there's no graph, and I have no idea if my line is vertical or horizontal or diagonal. So what we're going to have to do is find the distance from the center to the point on the circle, okay? So to find distance, we need our lovely distance formula back from the first unit. Distance formula is x2 minus x1 squared plus y2 minus y1 squared. Okay, so time for a lot of work. So all of this is so we can find our radius, because I already know my center. So I'm going to label this my x1 and my y1, and my x2 and my y2. It does not matter. So let's type this under the square root. I'm going to start with x2, so 7 minus sign 9. Close it squared plus my y value is 4 minus sign 10. Close it squared. Now I could straight type this in the calculator, but that's actually not going to help me out in case it is a decimal. And we cannot have decimals for our radiuses. So I got to do some mental math here. So let's simplify. 7 minus 9 is negative 2 squared. 4 minus 10 is negative 6 squared. Okay, keep going. Negative 2 squared is negative 2 times negative 2. Negative times negative will always give you positive. So 2 squared is 4. And then 6 squared is 36. So I end up getting the square root of 40. Okay, it is important that you leave it as a square root of 40 because I'm going to end up squaring it in a second in my formula. So all of this mental math was so that you can find the simplified radical version of your square root. Okay? So now I can take my information, my center, and I can take my information of my radius and write my formula. So again, our formula is parentheses x minus your x value squared, y minus your y value, center, squared equals your radius squared. So remember, square root of 40 squared, it's going to cancel out the square root and the squared to give you just a 40. And so that is our final answer if we know the center and a point on the circle. Okay? So that was a whole lot of work. So I'm definitely going to do one more with y'all. Let's switch it up to purple. So again, I want to write the equation given the center and then given a point. Okay? So step 1 is to find the distance formula. I'm going to label my x1 and my y1, x2 and y2, and substitute it in this formula. So x2 is -7, minus sign is always there, and then my x1 is a 1, close it, squared. Plus, my y2 is -13, minus sign is always there, and then my y1 is a -5. So it is okay to have minus a negative. Close it, squared. Now let's do some mental math. Let's simplify in the parentheses. -7 minus 1 is -8 squared. I am going to go ahead and make this a plus. So -13 plus a 5, I do believe is an 8, -8 squared. That's all still underneath our radical. Anything negative squared is going to be a positive. So 8 times 8 is 64. And then same thing over here, 64. Add 64 and 64 to get 128. Okay, so this is my radius from the center to some point on the circle. Okay, so that is that radius distance. So I'm going to leave it as a simplified square root for my formula. So let's start off with our formula using this center point here. So parentheses, x minus 1 squared plus y, and then minus a -5, which we know becomes a plus, equals your r squared. And if I have 128 squared, they cancel each other out, leaving you with 128. Okay? All right. I want you guys to try these next two. They're exactly what we just did. I just want you to try them on their own. Can you write the equation with the center and then a point on the circle? So press pause and try those on your own. Let's check our answers. For number 10, if you end up doing the distance formula, you get the square root of 257. So when you square root it, you would just have 257 in your formula. Using the center, make sure you change your signs. Okay? Same thing with 11. As long as you're doing the distance formula correctly, you end up getting square root of 65 for your radius. So when it's in your formula, it's just 65. Your center had a 0 for your y value, so no need to put y plus 0 in parentheses. Okay, so let me know if you have any questions on how to write the equation of a circle given a center and a point on the circle. Otherwise, you can head to part 2 of the video. Thanks for watching.